Measurements are necessary. They're important. Whether you're telling time, counting money, or building a house, measurements set parameters for success. These days, a successful life is often determined by tangible things. A promotion, a new car, or even good health. But what if we've got it all wrong? Can success be measured that easily? The fear has always been, what if I don't succeed? But what if that's not it at all? Maybe the true question is, what if I do succeed in things that don't matter?
So thanks for worshiping with us at Bethlehem Church, making much of Jesus. If you're with me here at 316, here, if you're in our South Venue, 211 campus, if you're watching online, maybe traveling this weekend, whatever it is, welcome. Thank you for taking some time to join with us. I'm Jason. I know many of you. Pastor Matt's with you there at 211. Hope to get a chance to shake your hand before our day is out, but we are thrilled that you choose to spend a few moments with us of your weekend. Now, let's hop right to it. If you're visiting with us, there's notes on your back. I want to hop in the deep end and kind of have a frank conversation today. So I think those can help you because they keep me on track and maybe some things that can serve you well. And so I will get there in a second. But the question we're asking in 2019 as we begin a brand new year is, how do you measure success? Because you have a measurement for it. I've got them. We have like the distance in our head between success and failure. It looks different. And that's what we said last week, that oftentimes it's the season of life or the stage of life you're in, success looks different. A 16-year-old looks different than a 66-year-old when they think of success. But what we all agree on is none of us want to be known as a failure, right? Who's with me? Nobody wants to be known as a failure. We don't want to experience failure and success. Think about it. Everybody has a measurement. So if you're on a team, and by team I mean like playing for keeps team. Like if you're on a team, it's like wins or losses determine success. Right, wins or losses. And so we're a college football church, and by we're a college football church, I'm a college football guy. Congrats to Clemson folk. Congrats if you're in the room. Yeah, all two of you. Good. It's so good. Right, congrats, man. It's impressive. Impressive. Good for you. If you're Alabama fans, man, Alabama, man, my heart breaks for you, said nobody ever. Right? Welcome to life with the rest of us, man. That's what an L feels like, okay? But in a company, right, many times it's sales, revenue, you know, like what are we bringing in? Many times for a student, it's grades, it's degrees, right? How many colors are you going to wear in your graduation robe of honors that you receive? At Bethlehem Church, many times success is surviving the parking lot, you know? It's that simple. Thanks for enduring with us. We are finishing and making more room, and 5 o'clock's an unbelievable service, but that's neither here nor there, okay? But thanks, it's enduring. Somebody one time said, I love your church, Jason. It tests my faith. And he goes, I'm not talking about your preaching. I'm talking about your parking lot. I said, amen, right? But success, it looks different. Here's what we said. As a culture, as a whole, as a people in America 2019, I'm not saying you, I'm saying we. We've defined success, we've boiled it down to three things, ultimately. Right, what we talked about last week, pleasure, what I experience, how much enjoyment and pleasure I experience, comfort in life. Accomplishment, what's my status, what's the bottom line, what's the title that goes for me, what have I achieved in life, and possession, what I own, the stuff I have. Now, sitting in church on a Sunday, if you're watching online, you would not think to yourself, yeah, that's the way if a preacher asks you, how do you measure success? Nobody comes out and says that. But listen, I'm not asking about your words. I'm going, if you will follow your actions long enough, I promise you, we all chase these things at some level, at some time. I'm not saying that that's what you would say, but Solomon, the most prosperous and wise, God gave him wisdom. In the Old Testament, the book of Ecclesiastes, he experienced more pleasure, had more accomplishment, more possession, all with God's wisdom that he was given than anybody in human history ever before or ever since. And the language he used when looking back on his life was language like vanity, toil, meaningless, chasing after the wind. Ecclesiastes 2, in fact, he says, I built this, I had this. I own this. These people work for me. I experienced this. You can read Ecclesiastes 2 in your own time. And it's just a list of here's everything I had, here's everything I experienced, here's what I gave myself to. And he looks back at the end of things, and he described his experience of success. And one of the words that I found repeatedly in the guys that I was studying that were writing on Ecclesiastes, the commentators, the guys who were old and a lot smarter than me, the word they kept coming back to is a word we don't use every day, but I think it's interesting. It's this word right here. That he writes, and he has a sense of vexation. Now, that's just a cool word. Come on. Who's with me? It's not just like an everyday word we use, vexation. In fact, say it with me on the count of three just so we sound smart. 1, 2, 3. Some of you sounds like a medical term. Maybe it is. I don't know. But here's what it actually is. Like when you read Ecclesiastes, if you think to yourself, Solomon's looking back going, I'm so sad. No, that's not what he's doing. Vexation means to be annoyed, irked, or bothered. And as Solomon looks back, he says, I chased the wind, chasing everything because I could, and I have a sense of vexation. I'm vexed. It bothers me. It irritates me. We can give our life to a vision. We can give our life to a set of goals that include pleasure, accomplishments, possession. Those things aren't bad, but they're not the end. And we can look up and find that we are still wanting a chasing after the wind. Well, Jason, that was then and there. You know, I hear what you're saying, bro, but this is like real world. Come on. Well, hold on a second. I read in an article of the Business Insider, it was reported that Marcus Peterson, the 36-year-old founder and president of Minecraft. Anybody know what Minecraft is in the room? If you have a preteen or teenage boy, for God's sakes, you know what, right? Minecraft is. 36 years old. He sold the company a few years ago for $2.5 billion. Did he say billion? I said $1 billion. Bought him a $70 million mansion. Was living life, living the dream, lavish parties, high-end vacations, world travel, hanging with celebrities, the epitome of success. Built something, sold it. Had everything that comes with it. He's now experiencing it. Marcus Peterson, developer and founder of Minecraft, sold for $2.5 billion. Interesting enough, in a tweet in the midst of all of that, the Business Insider notes, here's a tweet he put out after selling it. The problem with getting everything is you run out of reasons to keep trying. Hanging out with a bunch of friends and partying with famous people, able to do whatever I want, and I have never felt more isolated. The book of Ecclesiastes is a book of disillusionment. What many of you don't know words to put to what you're feeling. You feel very disillusioned in life because things that you've set out for haven't been. You've left wanting. There's a vexation. So write this down. The tendency is to measure life by success, to measure success by pleasure, accomplishment, and possessions. All over the room. That's the tendency. I'm not saying that's what you do. I'm not saying you agree with that. I'm saying it is in you, it is in me, that's how we kind of measure the difference between failure and success. That's the way of the world in America in 2019. Solomon then, here's the interesting thing. He pushes past the status symbols. If you missed last week, go back because we went all through that stuff. Go back online and watch. And he pushes past the status symbols. If you got your Bibles, Ecclesiastes 3. And here's what he says. For everything, there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up what's planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to cast away. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. Now, as I read this, you had this little melody played in your head, didn't you? Everybody in the room. And it sounds something like this. Come on. Now, if you know that song, if you have the melody, it means you're old, okay? Like if you're singing that in your head, that means you're old. That's all it means, right? But it's a song that kind of captures the essence of this. Here's what Solomon's saying. I was king of Israel, been given wealth, health and riches beyond any man, yet I could not control the outcomes and seasons of life. Solomon takes this conversation to a whole different place. Okay, symbols and status symbols, I chased them, I didn't get them, but sure enough, I'm king of Israel, and I've got God's wisdom. You would think it was in me to be able to control the season of life my family, my loved ones, and me were experiencing, that I could at least set us up to have ease, to have joy, to have peace, to life be well. You would think that, and here's what he said, and I tried, and I was chasing the wind. I tried, and I was chasing the wind. You want to get really honest, the tendency for most people, if you move past pleasure, accomplishment, and possession, up under all of that, there's this sense and this desire for control. For control. I didn't find satisfaction, contentment, and stuff, but surely I'll have a sense of the more control I have, the more I can control what my life experiences. Times, outcomes, and seasons, they're unpredictable and uncontrollable. Nothing we can do will interrupt the cycle of life. None of us want to control the whole world in this room. Like, we know we're not qualified for that. I'm not fit for that, so I don't think that. But you better believe you want control of your world. It's in us. We don't want control of the whole world, but you do want control of your world. Trying to find satisfaction or calm our fears and worries by controlling times and seasons and outcomes is a game only fools play. I'm not saying you're foolish. I'm not saying I'm foolish, but I do foolish things. And every person in here, we have this tendency. Okay, it's more than stuff. I know that. It's more than accomplishment. I know that. It's more than just status symbols. I get that. But up under it, there's the sense of at least I'll be at peace and feel all's okay if I can just have some semblance of control. So Solomon speaks to this. Couple of observations on success and seasons. Some of you will get set free. Write this down. Church, life is lived in seasons, and every season is beautiful in its time. Life is lived in seasons. Every season is beautiful in its time. What does a worker gain? Verse 9. From their toil or their effort. I've seen the burden God has laid on the human race. He made everything beautiful in its times. Good seasons, bad seasons. Seasons of celebration, seasons of heartache, seasons of laughter, and seasons of tear. This isn't just true as you observe the world. I need you to hear me. This will be true of your life as well. This isn't just true as you look out and go, man, I see that in the world. No, it will be true of your life as well. Now make sure you get this and take this to a different place. I'm not talking about stages of life. That's not what Solomon's getting at. You know that. Well, duh, Jason. Stages of life, like being like teenagers, stage of life. Right? Like newlyweds, stage. Toddler at home, stage. Retired, stage. That's not what Solomon's talking about here. Solomon's talking about the emotions that we feel in the midst of all those stages. Whoo. That's what he's getting at. Yeah. Everybody goes through stages. That's not an epiphany Solomon makes. I know I can't control the stage of life I am, but you do want to control what you're experiencing in that. Think about it. Every year, we move from fall to winter, winter to spring, spring to summer. And it's not based on anything we do. It's based on the Earth's rotation around the sun, right? And now, crazy thing is, in the northern hemisphere, we're experiencing winter. Other parts of the world, while we're experiencing this season of winter, they're experiencing another season. Now, if you live in the southeast, we experience 2 seasons in 1 week. Anybody with me? I mean, I'm not a doc in the room, but I mean, changing of seasons, our body has issues with that sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, I'm down with 30 degrees and I'm down with 70 degrees. I don't do good with 70 one day and 30 the next. Anybody with me in the room? And things just go haywire. But listen. Just as our bodies struggle with the changing of atmospheric seasons, listen to me, so does your emotions struggle with the changing of seasons that your life is going through. And I think, I want to say this to you, I need everybody to hear me. In a world that is increasingly chaotic, where uncertainty abounds and fear is everywhere, there's this sense of, okay, those things I don't measure success, but especially for suburbanites, I live in the country. No, you live in the suburbs, friend. Okay? Especially for suburbanite moms and dads, there's this sense of all the uncertainty in the world and the mean and the bad. If I can just control this, then I'll have a sense of accomplishment. You're a fool chasing after the wind. Why? Here's what Solomon's saying. You and I, we're created beings. We are not the infinite creator. God is. Now, none of you in this room disagree with what I just said theologically there. Biblical worldview, maybe, I don't think, no, you don't disagree, but listen to me, that is way harder to live than it is to believe. That's way harder to live than it is to believe. Like, think about this, 95% of what set the course of your life, do you know you had no say in? 95% of what sets the course of your life, you had no say in. What are you saying? The time in which you were born, the family in which you were born to, right? The place in which you were born, the place on the map in which you were born, the family you're born to, the genetic hardwiring that you have, the talents that you have. You didn't have a say in it. Like, you didn't go, oh man, that's what I want. No, it sets the course of our life. You and I are not infinite creators. We're dependent creatures. So listen, what I think sometimes we need to sober. Did he say sober? I said sober. Sober ourselves up. Because just like we're experiencing winter in the northern hemisphere, other parts of the world, they're experiencing summer, experiencing a different season. That is true also of what's happening in people's lives in this room at this moment. And I think we only understand life through the season that we're in. In our me culture, we know the season that's going on in our life. And we forget sitting at 211. We forget sitting in this room. I'm not talking about the stage of life. I'm talking about what's happening in your life emotionally speaking right now. Seasons, and God has a season in everything that we walk through. And we only see life through us, and we forget. Sometimes we need to be sobered up because there are people going through different things than we are at different times. That is how the world works. What do you say? Let's break this down for a second. So a time to plant and a time to uproot. There are people in this room that are moved to this area that are trying to find a family of faith, put down roots. Everything at Bethlehem Church, everything in this area is new to them. They're walking through a new season in their life. There are also people that God's about to move. Some of you are watching online. I've talked to you. You've had to move other parts of the country. And you've had to uproot and everything you know and your job and your family. It took you, and you are walking through a season. Listen to me. There is a time to kill and a time to heal. What are you saying, Jason? Like there are soldiers and families of soldiers sitting in this room, and there are doctors and nurses and families of doctors and nurses, and everything has its appointed time under God's creation. That's what Scripture says. For what they do and for who they are. There's a time to kill and a time to heal. There's a time to tear down and a time to build. What does that mean? There are some of us in this room that are in toxic, unhealthy relationships right now. And it is not one choice you're going to make, but you are going through a season of life where you need to tear down some unhealthy relationships that you have. You want to know the sum of somebody's lives? You point to the 5 or 6 people who are closest to them, who have the most say in their life. I will show you the sum total of their life. And there are some of you that separating yourselves from some influences that are bringing you down and continually filling you up with, it's not just one choice, it's a season you have to walk into. There are others in this room that you've made some forgiveness choices from a distance, but you're in a time of restoration. You need to restore some relationships in your life. You need to restore some relationships in your family. And it's not going to happen in one season. You are walking into a season of building some things. Not just one decision. We like making a decision and moving on. It's a season, much of life is, that you walk through. There's a time to weep and a time to laugh. There are some of us in this room that have people that are dealing with like sickness on the edge of death. There are people who they've lost in the last few weeks. I will do a funeral in 2 hours. I will leave, get in my car in 2.5 hours, and I will stand before a family who lost their 35-year-old son that I promise you this time last week, the last thing they thought they would be at was the funeral of their son. And there's a time to weep. And there's a time to laugh. What does that mean? There are some of you in this room that you need to take a real deep breath and stop laughing at everybody around you. Stop laughing at yourself because you're laughable. You need to begin to kind of not take yourself so seriously. Smile, right? You're going into a season where you are so fun. You just need to smile and go, man, my life. All right, like just laugh and just breathe. Some of us, there's a time to keep and a time to throw away. What do you mean by that? There's a time to hold things close and there's a time to let things go. There's a time, listen, to be silent and a time to speak. There are some of you in this room that believe God has given you the gift that everybody in your world needs to know your opinion at all times. He has not. You believe the gift God has given you is to let everybody know what's going on and give your opinion on everything. And you need to realize that sometimes it's okay to not say anything. You don't have an answer for everything and you're in a season of being quiet. There's some of us that would rather not make a big issue, but you need to be a voice of justice and a voice of issue. Do you realize, do you see it, what I'm saying? That's what Solomon's saying. This is not just what you observe. This is what you will experience in life. And sometimes we just need to be sobered up and realize that the season we're in, somebody else is in a different season. Life is just bigger than the season you're in. Life is just bigger than the emotions you're experiencing right now. It's lived in seasons, stages, not newlywed, teenager. Those are stages. Life is lived in seasons as well. You know why? Because you and I have far less control than we think we do. Boy, that makes us uncomfortable, doesn't it? Whew. You just really don't. And that's why, here's why it's okay. Here's where it gets good. No season is good enough or bad enough to define your life. Some of you breathe that in. 2:11. Breathe it in. There is no season good enough or bad enough. Some of you sit in the South venue. Whatever you're walking through, it is not good enough or bad enough to define your life. Let me tell you why it's not good enough or bad enough to define your life. Because it's a season, it's temporary. Here's what that means. It has a beginning and an end. You're in a season, it has a beginning and an end. That's why it can't define your life. Solomon said, every season is beautiful in its time. Notice what he didn't say. Every season is beautiful in the moment, because there's sometimes that you're in a season, it's not beautiful. You're having to endure it. You know what I'm saying? There are some seasons you enjoy, and I wish I could stay here. And there are some seasons you endure going, how in the world? That's part of the life experience. That's what Solomon's saying. Let me push back a little bit, Jason. I hear what you're saying, man. And maybe sitting out there, I mean, every season is beautiful this time. I'm with you. Like, I can get how losing a loved one in their older age, you know, and maybe they've gone on to be with heaven. I can see how that's beautiful this time because they've been faithful and they've gone on to see Jesus. Like, I can see how maybe a season of reconciliation after heartache can be beautiful, but I don't ever see how cancer can be beautiful. I don't see how betrayal and loss can be beautiful. I don't see how, like, working 2 jobs that I don't like to pay bills because I don't have any child support, I'm not seeing how that's ever beautiful. How can you say that? Come on, Ecclesiastes 3, Solomon explains this. He made everything beautiful in its time, not necessarily the moment that you're in. Also, here it is, he put eternity into man's heart. Woo, this is going to get good now. Yet so that he cannot find out what God has done from beginning to the end. I perceive that there is nothing better for them than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Also that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure. In all their effort, this is God's gift. That you will enjoy life more if you realize this. God has set eternity in your heart. Write that down, church. That God has set eternity in your heart. Everything in life will make more sense and bring more enjoyment when you realize that what's set in your heart is not a temporary season. It can't define you, but God set eternity in your heart. C.S. Lewis famously said, if we find within ourselves a desire that nothing can easily satisfy, no pleasure, no accomplishment, no status, no season. Here's what he says. The most probable explanation is that you and I were made for another world. So what do you mean? Like when my kids graduate high school, I know I'm going to feel a sense of accomplishment. When your kids graduate, you should. But here's what I promise you. That sense of accomplishment will last 3 days until you start realizing you got to pay for college now. You know, come on. Like when you get the status of boss, shift manager, Start your own company, you got a couple of employees. When you get the title and the paycheck that you want, well, a little bit of accomplishment comes with that. Sense of, okay, I made it. And it lasts for about 3 days till you realize the responsibility that comes with that. If and when you get the beach house, the lake house, get to the neighborhood that you want, get to the place where you can have what you want. I'm not saying you're not going to feel some sense of accomplishment or, honey, look, what we dreamed of. But the feeling you think it's going to bring won't last. Why? God set eternity in your heart. Like I learned this early in ministry. Let me tell a story about myself. Like I had the opportunity, late 20s, to preach. Like the pinnacle of what I do is man, I got to speak in front of 10,000 people, like late 20s. Like most people work a life for that. And I had the unbelievable opportunity at a young age. And so, man, I get the call and they say, will you come? And I'm like, I know this place. If I said this place, you would know it. I'm like, you want me to come speak? Like real cool people speak. You want me to come speak at this? They're like, yeah. So, you think, okay. I made it, right? I get on a plane, fly up there, and I parse every word. I got funny story. I got a punchline. 10,000 people. You walk on stage. It's, no, it wasn't at all, right? You walk on stage. It was a bad speaker, really. It wasn't anything to do with the crowd. I didn't hardly sleep the night before, and I think to myself, I made it. From here on out, I'm going to have my own website. From here on out, right? I'm going to sign some autographs. This is right before social media took off. Make sure you get a picture of me, right? And I thought, I had made it. I remember walking out, timers on me, get up, crazy, do my thing. I remember walking off, a few people shaking my hand, getting in my rental car, and here's what I thought as I sat down. Well, that's it? That's it? Why? Because in my mind, I had made it something that never was. And to top it all off, I get in my rental car driving back to the airport. Cop pulls me over and gives me a ticket, right? And let me tell you what beats that. The ticket cost more than what they paid me to come speak at their event. True story. Some of you are like, I can't believe my pastor got a ticket. I can't believe it cost more than what they paid me, right? You are looking for something in this world to give you this sense of arrived and I've got it. On this side of eternity, it's not going to happen. Why? God set eternity in your hearts. Humans are bound by time. You and I are bound by the space in which we live. But let me say this to you. You're wired for eternity. Here's what that means. We intuitively know there must be meaning somewhere. Even there's got to be more than this, even when we experience good things. Let's write this down. You're bound by time. That's what we're bound by. But you're wired for eternity. You're bound by time. But you're wired for eternity. So let me say this. Listen, front and the back, 211. South Venue, listen right here with me. Make sure you get what I'm saying. God set what's in your heart, you don't. God set what's in your heart, you don't. What are you saying? God did not set your wife in your heart. She's a gift from God, but she can't give you what you're looking for when it comes to meaning and significance. And if you are trying to get from her that, men, listen to me, you have set her up to fail because God didn't set your wife in your heart. She gave her to you as a gift. God didn't set your husband in your heart. He gave him, he's my special, he's my soulmate. Man, come on. God set what's in your heart. Some of you, listen to me, suburban mamas, listen to me. He didn't set your kids in your heart. He gave you to them for a season. And they're not going to give you, and you being able to control. We have become fascinated in the church, the Christian church. I'm looking out and I'm talking to you of we think our job is to make sure we set our kids up for success and happiness, and our job is to make sure they don't fail. You don't have control over that. And God didn't set it in your heart. And when you think this, if I can just control this, then man, you are setting yourself up for fail. What are you saying, Jason? I'm saying God didn't set money in your heart. God didn't set your giftedness or your talent in your heart. God did not set your work in your heart. God set eternity in your heart and trying to find wholeness and satisfaction and significance and meaning that lasts. It may be temporary, but lasts. And anything else will leave you vexed, bothered, annoyed, and irritated. But here's the goodness of our God. Not only did he set eternity in our hearts, but he gave us eternity in the person of Jesus Christ. To a people bound by time, the gospel is Jesus came into this realm, into this world, into this time, and gives us eternity. So like you got to understand it. Like you and I are not temporary beings. We have a temporary physical body, but we're eternal souls. The people you listen, like what we believe Christian worldview is you and I are eternal beings and souls. Here's what that means. This may be a life you're in temporarily, but you're eternal. And in the person of Jesus Christ, listen. It's where we meet our eternal answer. Eternal answer that we find that satisfaction, contentment. So let me talk to Bethlehem Church for a second. All of us. Like what is success at Bethlehem Church? What's the measure of success? Well, let me boil it down to you. We believe what I am saying, that God set eternity in every man, woman, boy, and girl's heart. But that's what God said, and we want to be a church. We want to continue to be a church that in a world where everybody chases the wind. Come on. And they look up and go, what in the world have I done? We want to stand at the crossroads of that world with a banner of Jesus waving, saying there is eternity. There are things to consider. Right, like there has never been, I don't know if you're visiting or like, I want to get behind this. I look out and see some of our elder board. I look out and see some of our staff, some of our former staff that's been here with us. I look out and see. There has never been one time when we've set a number as our measure of success, not once. We've never one time prayed for a certain number to come to this church. I'm not against that. That's just, no, we've always said we're going to be healthy. What do you mean by healthy? We're going to preach and talk about Jesus. We're going to love each other even when we're difficult. And we're going to love our community with no strings attached. Why? Because Jesus said, love your neighbors yourself. That's good. If we will do those things, we will continue to create space. And as we've done those things, we're in a season, you know that. Like if you go to the parking lot, one of my parking guys sent me a picture on my phone going, bro, it's a zoo out here, praise God. That is a good thing. I hope, do you realize how cool that is? That it's like the most crazy place you get to go to in the week. How cool is that? It's the house of God. That's good. I mean, in a war, like that's a good problem. Like, listen, I'm going to let you know at 211. It's going to take you a few minutes to get out of the parking lot. You know what you should say? Praise the Lord, I'm in a season of blessing at this church. Listen. And we have to understand God has called us in this season. So we're opening up at 211. We've got plans to continue expanding there in the fall. Right, as you guys continue, only 18 months in to grow. Here, we're opening up the South venue. There's a couple hundred people sitting there right now. In 2 weeks, there'll be a live band. Joel or Chevis will be there. One of the two of them leading every week. They'll rotate back and forth. Which one's going to be where? Doesn't matter. Right? And I need some people who call Bethlehem Church home to go, you know what, man? I'm willing from now to Easter to create some space. And that'll be an exact, what's going on in here will be happening in there, just like it's happening at 211. Creating space. 5 o'clock's a great service. God's there. It's way better than 11:15 too. Just letting you know that. God is at that service. He's not here, but he's there, okay? But listen to me. Jason, how can we help? I tell people all the time, outside of doctrinally, go to a church that preaches the Bible. Outside of that, how do I find the church that I want to go to? You need to go to a church that you're not scared to look at somebody and go, you need to come to my church with me. That you want to invite somebody to. You don't need to go to a church you have to explain, well, I'm going to invite you to my church, but let me explain all that. No. You want to go to a church, right, where they teach the Bible and you can look at somebody and go, dude, I don't have all the answers and God's changing me, but let me take you to a place where I've sensed God moving. I think maybe that's where you want to be. We've got to continue to be that. So will you agree with me that I'm okay for a season if I have to sit in another place? Is that okay? Yeah, good. Praise the Lord. It's all good. But listen to me. I need you to own this as we close. This is just, as you begin 2019, I want you to say this over and over again. Own it. I do not have the power to control what season I'm experiencing right now. You don't have it. You don't, and so if that for you gives you some type of sense of a measure of success, as the measure of control you have, let me say this, you're chasing after the wind. You're never gonna catch. That's what Solomon says. I should have been able to. I should have been able to, and I couldn't. I should have been able to. In my position. Every season's beautiful in its time because what God does, and this is so good, is that we begin to watch how God works in the best of moments and the worst of moments. My question is, what season are you in? And here's the thing I want you to write down. Let me tell you what you do have. You do have the power to trust in every season you experience. That's the power you got. 2:11, that's the power. You don't have the power to control. And you're going to be vexed. You're going to be irritated. Now, you guys know I'm visual, so let me close by this. I try to kind of explain what I think Solomon's setting up here. What I think Solomon's setting up here is the guys come out. Like what I see as I watch, as I even at times absorb my own life and looking back, right? So Solomon says, okay, chapter 1, pleasure, accomplishment, possession. None of those things gave me the sense of, I thought they would. Let me boil it down. Here's what we said. I had all the sex you could want to have. I had every title and status you could ever want. And everything you could possibly own, I had to own or had the opportunity to own. And he looks and goes, and I look back and it was toil. I gave a lot of effort. It was chasing after the wind. I know most of us go, those things aren't my measure of success, but we're drawn to that. And then he says, but up under it all, well, maybe if those things don't bring me contentment, if those things don't bring me satisfaction, maybe that I can set everybody up to be happy, healthy, and wealthy, that we can all be in the experience of life that we enjoy. Maybe that, and it didn't. For every season, every part of life, there's a season. And then that season is beautiful, it's time. Maybe not in the moment. Come on, some of you in a moment, you're enduring. Some of you in a moment, you're enjoying. Be thankful. If you're enduring, be thankful. Why? Because God's with you in that. But he said eternity in your heart. You know what this is? Big old 20-gallon empty fish tank. It's a big old void. God set eternity in your heart. That's what he wired you up for. You're an eternal being. But you live in a temporary world, and we're bound by time. And you know what chasing after the wind is? If you can think, let me tell you what insanity is. You know the definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting, everybody knows that. What did he say? Expecting different results. Same thing over and over. Teenager, listen to me. Some of you college students in the room, some of you 40-year-old men. You reason like a 20-year-old kid. Because life's always been about status. It's always been about accomplishment. It's always been about experience. Some of you moms in the room, it's about can I hold, can I control? Some of us deal with some things. All of us at times. Insanity is a world, it's Christians, it's people who are Christ followers that know that their eternity is set in their heart, but they continue trying to fill that eternal void with temporary things. I got a little teardrop here. Do you know how long and how tedious it would be for you and I to sit here and try to fill this big old void with this little teardrop, this little eye drop thing? You do this long enough, let me tell you what you end up feeling. It's kind of cool, man. Look, oh, that's neat. Okay, look. At first, it's like, well, that's kind of cool. But let me tell you this. That right there is insanity. It's just going to continue over and over and over and over. And let me tell you what's going to happen. I keep doing this, and 1 o'clock comes, and you're still sitting in here. Let me tell you what you're going to feel. Vexed. Irritated, bothered and annoyed. You know why you feel that, gentlemen, in this room? Because this is what you're doing. You've got an eternal void. You know the things of God, but you keep seeking other things to fill what only He can. Let me tell you what this is right here. Can I say at the end of the day? This right here is exhausting. When I look at our world, you know what I see? A bunch of exhausted people. Meaningless. Chasing after the wind. They look at life and they look at where they're at, and they're supposed to, there's still this sense of, there's a vexation, bothered and annoyed. Oh, maybe sooner or later you'll get there. But in the process, you get exhausted and you look and go, there's got to be an easier way than this. Come on. There's got to be an easier way than this. He said eternity in your heart. Oh, you're bound by time. Here's what Solomon says. When you understand eternity is what's set in you, you'll enjoy the things of this life more than when you realize they're not lasting. They're temporary. Enjoy them. But know that you were created for more, and it right-sizes things.